They said it would never happen. An American automaker standing up to the most powerful man in the country? Unthinkable. But then it did. General Motors didn't just challenge Donald Trump, they blindsided him. And what followed wasn't just a political feud, it was a full-blown economic war with global consequences. This isn't just about cars. This is about power, about control, about what happens when a corporation stops following the rules and writes its own playbook instead. So, what did GM really do, and how could this one move reshape everything you thought you knew about the future of American manufacturing? Let's dive in. For decades, General Motors was a symbol of American strength. Assembly lines, hard hats, roaring engines, and national pride. But the world was changing fast, and GM knew it. Behind closed doors, the company had been quietly planning a transformation, one that would shift its entire identity. Then came the announcement. General Motors would expand global production, cut reliance on U.S. factories, and double down on electric vehicles. Translation? Less American jobs, more overseas factories, and a direct challenge to everything Trump had promised to protect. And they didn't just make the announcement, they made a statement. GM was looking forward, not backward. But Trump? Yeah, he took it personally. Within hours, Trump fired back. Press conferences, tweets, rally chants. He unleashed a barrage of fury, branding GM a disgrace and accusing the company of betraying American workers. He didn't just criticize them, he vowed revenge. To his supporters, this was another example of corporate greed. To Trump, it was a slap in the face from a company he once praised. And behind the scenes, the White House scrambled to respond. Tariffs, penalties, regulations, all on the table. But there was one problem. GM wasn't playing Trump's game because while he was fighting for headlines, they were executing a strategy years in the making. GM hadn't made this decision overnight. Years before the announcement, the company had started preparing for a future that wasn't defined by borders. They saw where the auto industry was headed, and they weren't going to wait for Washington to catch up. They built factories in Asia and Europe, secured battery materials in Africa, diversified their suppliers across 3 continents. It wasn't about cheap labor, it was about resilience, flexibility, survival in a global economy that was shifting fast. And most importantly, they bet big on electric. While Trump was calling for more coal and more combustion engines, GM was investing billions into EV tech, clean infrastructure, and a post-oil future. They weren't just changing how cars were made, they were changing where they were made and why. Trump was furious, and he struck back hard. A 200% tariff on all GM imports, an economic sledgehammer designed to crush the company into compliance. Wall Street panicked, GM's stock dipped, industry insiders braced for a disaster. But behind the boardroom doors at General Motors, silence, calm, confidence, because they'd seen this coming and they were ready. Trump thought he had them cornered, but GM had already shifted critical operations out of the line of fire. No single country controlled their supply chain. No tariff could cripple their business, and thanks to strong partnerships with foreign governments, GM had fallback markets ready to go. Trump brought a hammer to the table, GM brought a chessboard, and every move had already been made. They weren't just trying to survive, they were preparing to dominate a new industry, and they weren't going to apologize for it. GM's defiance sent shockwaves across the industry. Ford, Toyota, Tesla, all watching closely. If GM could stand up to the White House and survive, could they? Ford faced a crossroads. Either stay loyal to domestic manufacturing or quietly expand overseas like GM. Toyota had long mastered the global game, but now the pressure was on. And Tesla, already manufacturing in China, it saw an opportunity. Its nimble infrastructure could turn chaos into dominance. Meanwhile, workers and unions were furious. Protests erupted. Union leaders demanded answers. Was this the beginning of the end for American auto jobs? To some, it felt like betrayal. To others, it was inevitable. What started as one company's decision had become something much bigger, a symbol of a national identity crisis. Trump represented the populist dream: jobs at home, factories in America, loyalty above all. But corporations like GM had a different reality to face. To survive, they had to go global. Cheap labor, rare minerals, global logistics. This was the new battlefield. And now, the two visions were clashing, with no middle ground in sight. Could companies stay profitable and patriotic? Or was that just a fantasy? While America waged an internal war, the rest of the world moved fast. China ramped up EV production, offering cheap, efficient electric vehicles backed by government subsidies. Companies like BYD and NIO exploded in size, churning out cars and batteries at lightning speed. Europe? Just as ruthless. Volkswagen, Renault, BMW, all focused on sustainability and all receiving massive government support. If American automakers stalled, they wouldn't just lose jobs. They'd lose everything: technology, market share, and control of the future. And GM's move may have opened the door for that to happen. While America waged an internal war, the rest of the world moved fast. China ramped up EV production, offering cheap, efficient electric vehicles backed by government subsidies. Companies like BYD and NIO exploded in size, churning out cars and batteries at lightning speed. Europe? Just as ruthless. Volkswagen, Renault, BMW, all focused on sustainability and all receiving massive government support. If American automakers stalled, they wouldn't just lose jobs. They'd lose everything: technology, market share, and control of the future. And GM's move may have opened the door for that to happen. The battle between GM and Trump exposed a deeper truth. The fight for the future of American industry isn't happening in Washington. It's happening in boardrooms, on supply chains, and in the decisions made by companies with global ambitions. This isn't just about tariffs. It's about who gets to write the rules in the next era of economic power. Is it politicians pushing for nationalism, or corporations building global empires? One thing's for sure. This battle isn't over, and whatever happens next, it's going to affect you. From the price of your next car, to the kind of job you'll be able to get, to the country's place in the global power structure. The game has changed, and the question now is, who's playing it better? What do you think? Was GM smart to go global, or did they just spark the beginning of America's industrial decline? Let us know in the comments. And if you thought this was wild, wait till you see what happens next.